When night falls and sound withdraws, the archive remains. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. There is a surface. It does not announce itself. It exists at the boundary between one density and another, between what moves freely and what does not move at all. For a moment, it held something above it. Now it holds the record of what was above. The water does not grieve this. It has no mechanism for grief. It has surface tension, molecular cohesion, the slow redistribution of thermal energy as the light source withdraws below the geometry of the earth. These are not emotions. They are arrangements. They are the way one state of matter negotiates the presence of another. The surface is there. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. It feels smoothness, but the smoothness that matters is smaller than touch. It is the kind of smoothness that allows rays arriving together to leave together, keeping their order. What was removed to make this surface was not foreign material. It was the surface itself, the original texture of the metal, the small hills and valleys that formed when the metal cooled, the microgeography of its first existence. Preparation is subtraction. The mirror is what remains after the metal's own surface has been taken away layer by layer, until what is left is no longer the metal's native form, but a form imposed by intention. A candle flame appears elsewhere in the room. The flame is not on the metal. It is only near it, yet the flame becomes visible inside the disc, suspended behind the surface, at a distance that matches the distance before it. The disc does not contain depth. Depth is assembled by the leaving light. A face approaches, and a face is returned. A wall stands behind, and the wall is returned. A room surrounds, and the room is returned. Nothing enters the metal. Nothing stays. The return is not a stored image. It is direction preserved. It is light leaving in a coherent arrangement that makes the mind call it room, face, distance. The disc remains unchanged. The relation changes, and the return changes with it, or in the same medium that shapes the room's reach. A spoon touches ceramic. At the point of contact, the vibration is precise. Across the room, the arrival contains less definition. The body of the sound remains, but the outline has blurred. Something has been absorbed in transit. The object did not soften. The hand did not change. Only the interval intervened, taking away part of what would normally survive. Between the spoon and the ear, nothing visible occupies the distance, and yet the distance is occupied. What the air removes in transit, it removes without remainder. Earlier, the surface held the full spectrum. The shorter wavelengths scattered first, deflected by the atmosphere's depth at low angles, distributed across the visible field in frequencies the eye registers as blue, as pale, as the colorlessness of altitude. The longer wavelengths traveled further. They arrived at the surface still intact. Orange, red, the color of iron at the threshold of its transformation. The water accepted these without preference. A surface accepts without selecting. It takes the angle of incidence and returns the angle of reflection with mathematical fidelity, adjusting only for the refractive index of the medium below. The surface is not generous, it is not indifferent. It is a boundary condition. A boundary condition performs its function without deliberation. Now the light source has moved below the horizon. The surface still holds something, not the colors themselves. The cooling the colors left behind. Thermal memory. The water that absorbed the red frequencies is fractionally warmer than the water that absorbed nothing. This difference is measured in thousandths of a degree. It is real. It is invisible. It will dissipate before morning. What remains is not warmth. What remains is the record of warmth, written in a medium that cannot hold it. Above withdraws. This is not a metaphor. The sky above the water is a physical object, a column of gas layered by density, held to the surface of the earth by gravitational attraction. As the light source drops below the geometric horizon, the column loses its borrowed luminosity from the bottom upward. The lowest layer darkens first, then the next, then the next. The surface registers this, not because it thinks, not because it perceives, because reflection is a physical process, and physical processes respond to changed conditions. Where the sky was bright, the surface returned brightness. Where the sky darkens, the surface returns darkness. Not immediately, not all at once. In the gradual way that any large body of water integrates a changing input. The pond is slow, the pond is thorough. By the time the sky at the horizon has passed from orange to the color that exists between orange and absence, the surface has already begun to hold the color of the zenith instead. That deeper blue the atmosphere retains longest. That last frequency before the atmosphere admits the light is truly gone. The pond is always slightly behind the sky. The pond is always catching up to something that has already moved. This delay is not a flaw. It is the nature of large systems. They are not quick. They are complete. There is a film. At the boundary between water and air, molecules are pulled in 3 directions simultaneously. Downward by the bulk of the liquid beneath them. Sideways by neighboring molecules in the same plane. Upward. But upward there is only air. Only scattered molecules of nitrogen and oxygen that make no comparable claim. The surface molecules pull harder sideways. They pull harder down. The result is a film that behaves as though it were elastic, as though it had been stretched across the opening of something. It has not been stretched. It simply is. The tension is a consequence of asymmetry, of being at a boundary, of having more below than above. Every molecule at the surface experiences this. Every molecule holds the plane intact by being held in turn. A fly lands. Its weight distributes across a contact area small enough that the surface tension is not overcome. The fly stands on a film that is not solid, in a region that is not quite liquid, at a boundary that has no thickness. The fly does not understand this. The surface does not offer explanation. When the fly leaves, the surface closes behind it. No record, no mark. The film was disturbed and the film recovered. These are not opposites. They are the same process at different moments. Disturbance and recovery share a single mechanism. Only timing separates them. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The sky has left the color in the water. It is not the sky's current color. The sky's color is changing, has changed, is still changing in the upper atmosphere. What the water holds is the sky's previous color, the one from moments ago, the one that no longer exists above. The water is slower than the sky. The water holds what the sky has already abandoned. This is not loss, or it is loss, but loss functioning as record. The water does not know what it holds. It only holds. The surface receives the angle and returns it. The bulk absorbs the frequencies and warms by fractions. The sky and the water negotiate this every evening. Neither initiates, neither concludes. The light withdraws. The surface adjusts. The record dissolves. The sky moves forward. The water holds the sky's past. At every moment, the water is the sky's memory of itself. A memory the sky does not possess, held by a medium the sky does not control. What is left is not the sky's color. What is left is not the water's color. What is left is the boundary state between one system losing something and another system returning it. Below the surface, the column of water is not uniform. Sunlight penetrates to depth, but selectively, frequency by frequency, each wavelength absorbed at its own rate. Red is absorbed shallowest, within the first few meters. Orange follows. Yellow continues longer. Green reaches deeper. Blue deepest of all, traveling further into the column, before the last photons convert to heat too small to measure from outside. The water below the surface has been stratified by light, not by the light that is there now, by the light of the hours before. The upper layers hold the warmth of the afternoon. The deeper layers are untouched by today's sun, responding instead to the thermal history of the season, of the months, of accumulated input that sank through convection and settled where settling happens. A diver passing through this column would feel the layers, would feel where this day ends and last week begins, would feel further down the temperature of winter, the temperature of the last hard frost that crossed the air above. The water holds all of this without distinction. Today's warmth and last winter's cold, layered, not confused, simply present simultaneously, each at its own depth, each real. From the surface, none of this is visible. The surface shows only what is above it. Below, in the column, the full archive extends downward into temperatures no current day has touched. The surface and the archive are contiguous. They share no information. The surface reflects what arrives from above. The column retains what sank from the same surface months ago, under different light, in a different season. They are the same body of water. They do not communicate. Two records, one medium, neither aware of the other. There is a moment in the transition from dusk to dark when the surface of the water and the sky above it reach the same luminosity. The sky is still faintly lit. The water still holds the sky's reflection, but the two are close enough in brightness that the boundary between them becomes uncertain. Not invisible, uncertain. A bird above the pond looking down would see the sky. A fish below looking up would see the sky. The surface for this moment does not separate these. It holds both simultaneously, neither above nor below asserting priority. This is the same surface that an hour ago doubled the room, that returned a second sky above the first, that made depth where there was only water. That doubling required difference. It required sky brighter than surface, or surface brighter than depth. Contrast made the threshold visible. Contrast made the return legible. Now contrast has withdrawn with the light. The surface still performs reflection. The geometry of angle is intact, but there is no longer sufficient difference between what arrives and what surrounds the arrival for the return to be readable as return. The surface is reflecting. The reflection is invisible. Both are true simultaneously. Neither cancels the other. This moment does not last. The sky will continue to darken. The surface will follow. The threshold will re-establish itself, visible again as water retains faint light longer than the air above it. Then as both reach the same dark, and the difference becomes structural rather than luminous. You know the surface is there because water does not move the way air moves, because wind makes different shapes at a boundary than it makes in open space. But in that moment, the moment of equivalence, the surface is neither mirror nor membrane. It is the place where above and below have made the same concession simultaneously. That moment has passed before it can be named. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. Where the water meets the edge, the stone at the bank, the root that enters the water at an angle, the reed stem that passes through the surface from below. Something happens to the plane. The surface does not remain flat. It curves. At the contact point between water and solid material, surface tension adjusts to the adhesive forces between water molecules and the material's surface. If the material is hydrophilic, if it has an affinity for water, as stone does, as most natural materials do, the water climbs slightly up the surface. The edge of the water is higher than the middle. The surface curves upward at its boundaries. This curve is the meniscus. It is small. It is measurable. It is the consequence of competing attractions, water for water, water for stone, resolved at the boundary into a shape that satisfies both claims simultaneously. The meniscus is not a compromise. It is the precise geometry physics requires when two different kinds of attraction meet at a shared edge. In the dark, the meniscus at the reed stem, and the meniscus at the stone bank, and the meniscus at every submerged root are performing their function without observation. The curve holds. The water is slightly higher at every edge than at the open center. The geometry of attraction persists through the night without requiring light to maintain it. The boundary of the pond is not a line. It is a curve. It has always been a curve. What looks like an edge from above is, from the side, an arc. The surface is still there. In the dark, it does not cease. Surface tension continues. The boundary between water and air continues. The molecules at the plane of contact continue their asymmetric arrangement, pulling toward the bulk, holding the film intact. No light arrives. The surface has nothing to reflect. It reflects the night sky. But the night sky at this hour is deep enough that the reflection is indistinguishable from the water's own darkness, from the depth below, from the column of cold that extends to the bed of the pond, and holds the records of seasons the surface has never witnessed. A wind crosses. The surface reorganizes. The reorganization propagates outward in rings the dark makes invisible. The rings cross each other, combine, cancel, combine again. The interference patterns are real. They are happening. No eye records them. When the wind stops, the surface settles. It does not return to the exact configuration it held before the wind. The molecules are not the same molecules. The thermal distribution has shifted by fractions. The surface is the same surface, same boundary, same tension, same negotiation between bulk and air. And it is not the same surface. Both are true. Neither cancels the other. The wind did not alter what the surface is. The wind altered only the momentary arrangement of what the surface holds. These are not the same thing. A second wind crosses, smaller. It moves along the bank where the meniscus meets stone, where water has been slightly elevated by adhesion since before the light failed. The meniscus does not yield to the wind. Surface tension at the edge holds the curve intact against the small lateral pressure. The curve was made by molecular attraction, and molecular attraction does not negotiate with wind. When this wind also stops, the surface settles again. Different configuration, same surface, same curve at every edge. This is what the surface holds, now that above has withdrawn. The thermal impression of the afternoon cooling. The faint stratification of a day's light settling. The interference pattern of the last wind dissipating. The depth below, which holds older records still. None of this is visible. The surface holds what it holds. The column holds what the column holds. The temperature differential between today's warmth and last winter's cold persists at its proper depth, not as memory, water has no memory, but as physical fact, as the arrangement of matter that results from everything that has happened to it. What happened to it became it. The sky above withdrew. The surface accepted the withdrawal. The record of what was above is held now in the cooling, in the depth, in the thermal stratification of a column that no longer receives input. Input has stopped. Record continues. This is what it means for a surface to close. Not to seal, not to end, but to shift from receiving to holding. The surface does not close in the sense of a door. It closes in the sense of a transition between states. The moment when accumulation becomes archive, when the day stops writing and what was written remains. The surface that reflected noon reflected it accurately. The surface that reflected dusk reflected it accurately. The surface that now reflects darkness reflects it with the same fidelity. Nothing has changed in the surface's behavior. What has changed is only what behavior now means. Accuracy in darkness produces no image. Fidelity to absence is still fidelity. Above has withdrawn. The surface is still. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. There is a surface. It has been there since before this began. It will be there after. The thermal record of today is cooling through the layers below. The sky above has reached its deepest frequency. The meniscus holds its curve at every edge, against stone, against root, against every solid thing the water touches, small, exact, unobserved. The surface is not resting. Rest implies a previous activity from which something withdrew. The surface is continuing. Surface tension continues. The molecules at the boundary continue their asymmetric negotiation. More pull below, less pull above. The film held intact by the aggregate of 1 billion small asymmetries, all pointing in the same direction. This is what the surface does at night, what it has done through every night before this one. From above, stillness. Within the column, slow motion, perpetual, invisible. At every edge, the curve that has no name in the dark. The cold of last winter is still there, at its proper depth, exactly as cold as the record requires. The surface that held the afternoon sky holds now only the absence of sky. Both are accurate returns. Both are the same surface. Preparation does not change what the surface is made of. The evening does not change what the surface is made of. What changes is only what arrives to be returned. And now, what arrives is dark, and the surface returns dark, faithfully, without preference, without loss. No retrieval necessary, no return expected. The surface continues. When night falls, the archive remains.